everybody, to the Nightly News Podcast. It is my absolute pleasure to welcome one of my favorite guests, the Executive Director of the Central Penn College Education Foundation, Sandy Box. Sandy, welcome back to the podcast.
Thank you very much. It's always a pleasure to be here.
Well, and we're also being joined by Nightly News President and also the Education Foundation intern for the term, Abby Bresky. Abby, welcome back to the show.
Thank you for having me.
It is absolutely our pleasure. So today we're going to talk a lot. This is the term you've got just an unbelievable amount of stuff going on. So not only can we talk to Abby about what she's doing for her internship, but of course, the Education Foundation Scholarship Essay is open during the month of August, so we'll talk about that. And then your number one event of the year, your number one fundraiser, in fact, one of the only fundraisers that you do, the 52nd Annual Central Penn Golf Open. That's going to be taking place on August 11th at 8 a.m. at Rich Valley Golf. So we're going to talk about all of those things today.
Right.
Well, why don't we start at the beginning? So Abby is doing an independent study this term so she's not to the point quite yet where she's ready for an internship. But something we've been piloting in the communication department is if we have students who are presented with an opportunity, but yet they're not quite ready for their internship, what we've done is we've basically created a program where they can get credit for these experiences. And so Abby, being an all-star in our program, has said basically since I've known her how important it is for her to work in the nonprofit field.
Right.
And so obviously she had experience with the foundation through the scholarship essay, of which she's won, and we'll talk about that. But she decided that she wanted to spend the summer helping you because the summer is, not that you don't always need help, but the summer especially is when you need help.
Absolutely.
So, Abby, let's talk a little bit about what your role is with the foundation through this term, and what are some of the things that in your first few weeks you've been working on?
So I would say my biggest thing so far has been helping Sandy prepare for the golf outing and the scholarship coming up the beginning of August. Some of the things that I've been working on is just kind of getting the word out about some of the people that sponsor the golf outing, or working on different mailings that are sent out, just different messages being spread that people might not fully understand.
So I think one of the things, and Sandy, correct me if I'm wrong here, but one of the things that we always talk about in our selection committee, of which I'm a part of, is how can we get more students to engage into this process? Because the bottom line is, while I know that you do offer some other types of scholarships, this is one of the most direct ways for students to apply for scholarship dollars here at Central Penn through the foundation. And depending on the term, we have anywhere from under 10% to about 15%. I'm estimating here, so if those numbers are incorrect, please verify. But it's nowhere near where it should be.
Right. It is not. As a matter of fact, I was looking at my figures from last submission, which was the spring, which was in February. I had 124 students apply.
Which was, if I recall correctly, one of the highest numbers in probably 3 or 4 years.
Right, exactly. At one point in time, our highest number that we had ever received were like 220 scholarship applications, which was phenomenal. Then, of course, COVID and how it changed everything. And with the enrollment numbers being a little bit lower than what they normally are, we haven't had students apply. But the fact of the matter is, we had more than 124 students. So
I guess all these other people are just independently wealthy.
I guess they are, because, those 600 that didn't even bother to apply, it's like, well, maybe we should go to them and see whether or not we can get a loan for others to pay for their college. But anyway, out of the 124 that applied, 98 students received a scholarship.
I think that's so incredible. Like, when I tell people in my classes, because as you know, this is something I require all of my classes to do, is to engage in this. And what I always find really interesting is that I think it blows people's minds when I tell them that anywhere between 80 and there was a term or two that almost 100% of the people that applied actually got something. And so, I think that's what's so interesting about this is you've got a pretty darn good chance to receive at least something, which could be of awards of $500, $1,000, or $2,000.
Right. And one of the reasons that, like I said, we awarded 98 out of 124, but some of those that were not awarded were either because of the fact that they graduated. So I can't give you money if you're not here. That's number one. Number two is that they didn't have a GPA of 2.0 or higher, which is a requirement. And that's not something that I can, there's no leeway on that. It is 2.0 or higher. And so, I mean, if you take that into consideration, that even lowers the number more. I think that there were probably somewhere between 5 and 7 students who applied who we weren't able to award, and they met the criteria, but we were not able to award them for whatever various reasons there were. So, I mean, I tell students all the time, this is the easiest hour. And that's really, I mean, if you take all the time that it takes to prepare your essay, to read the essay, prepare your essay, reread it, submit it, you're talking at the most an hour. And you could have the potential of receiving a $500 scholarship. I don't know where you're going to go to work that you can give $500 an hour, other than maybe an attorney. $500 an hour for a little bit of energy. And I tell students all the time, you can't get the essay wrong because the essay is about you. So who are we to say that it's wrong? It's your story. It's your answer to the question. So it's the easiest money that you have the opportunity to win. It's even easier than a scratch-off ticket, I just have to tell you. I mean,
well, you don't win most scratch-off tickets.
I was about to say better chances, too.
Right, exactly.
So what I want to talk about here is, first of all, to find the application, you will go to foundation.centralpenn.edu when it opens on August 1st. And it is open, I believe, until the 28th, if I'm not mistaken.
25th.
The 25th. So the 25th it closes. It opens August 1st, closes August 25th. Now, this term, the question is, drum roll please.
I could, I would.
How do you plan to use your education to help others? Right. Now, you want to talk about a question that there's no wrong answer to. Really, what you have to do is stop and think, okay, what is my goal and what do I plan on doing with my career? And secondly, how in that position am I going to be able to help people? Right. And I think for me personally, if I was approaching this, I think the most crucial part that so many students just skip right over in terms of writing is brainstorming. Right. Like, let's brainstorm. Okay, so I'm a college professor. Maybe on the surface, I'm not seeing how I'm helping people, but I mean, obviously I know that I am. Because in my education and in my position, I am able to provide mentorship, guidance, networking, and right there's my 3 main points.
Right,
you
exactly.
Know what I mean? So just taking that minute, maybe even 5 minutes, maybe even half of a day just to sit and think about it. Right. How am I genuinely going to help people? Now, when I go to Abby, Abby, one of the things that you have shared with me a lot is literally that's what you want to do is help people. Yes. So explain to me how you would offer an answer to this question. And I realize I'm putting you on the spot, but just think about, how do you plan to use your education to help others?
I think with the biggest way that you are able to help others is through things that you're passionate about. Because if you're not passionate about them and you don't care deeply about them, then you're not willing to help somebody else get past it. So I know, for one of my things for me is I feel passionate about helping other people. And that's something that I'm very passionate about through the West Shore Connect or in my day-to-day life. Because you don't know what people are going through when you walk to this, through a store or even just walking around campus. You don't know people's story. So I feel like the biggest approach to this scholarship would be going to your heart, which I know a lot of people say, but something that you're passionate about is a lot easier to write about. And it's things that you're going to want to follow through with. And you might not see how it's going to maybe come through, fruition in the future, but knowing that you have something that you're passionate about and knowing what you know about it will help you write the essay and how you're going to help other people.
Yeah. It's so interesting that we literally just had this conversation in class today, the same type of conversation, just simply that part of teaching COM 100 survey of mass communication. And what it is basically we take a day and kind of look through all the different types of media and different aspects of this field. And the number one thing that I tried to impart today was find something that means something to you that you're passionate about. Don't worry about this job makes $60,000 and this job makes $80,000. ultimately, if you're passionate about something, you will find a way to make a living in it.
Absolutely.
Right?
Absolutely.
And so when you think about it, just developing a passion for something is really what this is all about. And with that passion, to Abby's point, you can use that passion to find yourself a fulfilling career.
Right. Yeah. And to piggyback on that, I mean, even if it's just the communication itself, just that you want to offer somebody the opportunity, how can I help? What can I do? How can I assist you? So, and you're right, you don't know what somebody else is going through. You don't know, it was funny, I was walking across campus the other day and somebody said to me, "Oh, you look so serious," which is not my normal look, I assume. And I realized that I was deep in thought about something. So, but that person noticed.
Right.
So I guess take the time to notice. You don't have to, it doesn't have to be something major that you're doing, and you will have an impact on somebody's life. As far as like you said about brainstorming, I'm the type of person that when I'm working on something, I put bullet points. Like I'll come up with 3 or 4 bullet points, I'll write those down, then I think about it. Then I'll come back and start writing, and it kind of fills in the gaps as to what it is that the answer that I want to give. And then it's just easier that way. I think sometimes people sit down and go, "Oh, I have to write something." And then it's like, oh.
And then you stare and look at a blank word.
Right,
word
exactly.
Right.
Where if you start with little steps, 4 bullet points about what you want to convey to someone. And that's the other thing that I try and express to the students is people that are reviewing your scholarship don't know you. You have to sell yourself. That's what we do on a daily basis. That's what we do in our jobs. That's what we do in our education. That's what we do in our personal lives. We're kind of selling ourselves on whether or not it's the relationship you're in, whether or not it's the job that you want to fulfill, or the job that you're after. You're telling someone, "I am worthy of this. I am worthy of this job. I'm worthy of this relationship. I'm worthy of this money." You're selling yourself. Not your soul, but you're selling yourself.
I think that's the biggest thing too that I've learned, and what a lot of people have told me is through things like this, like you said, it doesn't have to be a big thing that you're doing with helping other people, but it's having that confidence in yourself, knowing that you are doing things in your life that either are impacting other people or have the potential to impact other people. I mean, for me, I just actually reconnected with one of my prior softball coaches, and to this day, he can tell me my first tryout.
Yeah.
He's like, "Because you were smiling the whole way through." And he's like, that's how you make an impact on people, is just by being who you are and being unapologetically you. And that's how people start believing in who you are, because if you don't believe in yourself, then other people are not going to follow in that footstep.
And as we talk a little bit more about this, Abby, you've been very successful in arguably limited opportunities. I mean, you've only applied like 2 or 3 times at this point, but every time you've gotten a scholarship, correct?
Yes.
So tell me, just for a tip, for students out there that maybe have never written it or have never thought about writing it, can you just walk me through your process? Not just necessarily with this question, I think we covered that, but how do you approach the scholarship essay itself?
I think I look at like the key words in the question. So for this one, it's you're helping others. You narrow it down to the most basic form of the question. And then I take what I do day to day, maybe like week to week, term to term, and I see how what I do could possibly fit into that question, and kind of like Sandy and you have said, bullet points, and then just taking it paragraph at a time. I personally don't start with an introduction or a conclusion, because at that point I don't even know how my essay is going to go. So I start with, what I know best, which is what I'm doing, and then after that I construct it and review it and edit it in any way that I think it may need. And I just make sure that my essay is conveying who I am. And I'm not trying to overthink it or be somebody that I'm not. So.
Nor should you be. Mm-mm. I think authenticity is what you're really looking for, right, Sandy?
Exactly.
So there's one thing that we always have to talk about with the scholarship. Well, 2 things that I always like to cover. Number 1, it said that it's looking for a minimum of 200 words or something along those lines. That is just a trick.
Right. It is just a trick.
It is not meant, they don't want a paragraph. They would like a concise 5-paragraph essay, maybe more if you would like to write more.
Right.
But to me, I always point out that it's almost sort of a trick to see who is going to do more than the bare minimum.
Right.
Often what we see is people who do the bare minimum don't score well, therefore they're often the people who do not win money.
Right, exactly.
So how about shooting for 500 to 700 words? I
Right.
think would be more feasible.
And I think it's very easy when you're writing something about yourself. I think it's very easy to be able to write 300, 400, 500 words without even working at it. But the 200 minimum does exactly that. It shows whether someone's just putting in the minimum effort. And their scores, they reflect that. And anybody who knows me over the years knows that there's one of the things that I always say is I will not reward bad behavior. Well, I'm not going to reward a bad essay either. So, take the time. The essays are reviewed by 5 different evaluators, and they're blind copied, so nobody knows who is submitting the answer. So they can look and see that what major you're in, what your GPA is, maybe your family size, and I think the city that you live in. They can see those kind of things, but they can't see the person. So feel free to provide them the information that they need to know who, not the name who they're talking to, who they're reading about, but the person that they're reading about, because that's very, very important in the scoring process. Yeah, the 200-word essay it's a trick. Some people take it, some people don't.
The last thing that I always think is important to talk about is there is a question or a checkbox on the application that talks about the Stabler Foundation. Now, first of all, you need to click that box in order to have the higher dollar scholarships. Much of the funds that we do give away do come from the Stabler Foundation that supports a variety of educational initiatives in this area. But I think a lot of people get confused by the way that it's sort of written about the Stabler Foundation. So I always try to give a quick summary, and then I'm going to let you sort of fill in the blanks. So first of all, what it says on there is that if you click this box and you win a scholarship, you have a moral obligation to repay this money, pay it forward, if you will. Now remember, moral obligation being Sandy is not going to keep a ledger of if you win $500 and you donate $50 that you still owe $450. That's not what this means. And I think that the way that it looks, it kind of does intimidate and scares people. But I always hope, I don't want to make them, but I always hope that my students do check that box, because I can't tell you how many times we've been sitting in a meeting just saying, gosh, I wish they would have just checked that box, and that would have made a difference between $500 and potentially a $2,000 award.
Right.
So just please make sure you check that box. It's a moral obligation, not a financial obligation. Nobody is going to keep track. It's just, hey, this person helped you. Can you help the next Central Penn night down the road?
Right. And that's exactly. And the funny thing is that Abby and I are working on letters to go out to prior Stabler recipients who have graduated. Okay, so I'm not going to ask you, if you get money this term, I'm not going to ask you for money next term. It's when you graduate. When you graduate and you have the opportunity to start your career. And I ask as little as, this is what I've started, your year of graduation. If you can take $20.23 annually and pay it forward, you're still paying it forward. You're right. It is a moral obligation, not a financial obligation. I'm not going to garner your wages. I'm not going to send you to collection. But I try to tell people, think of how you felt when you received notification that you were receiving $1,000 or $2,000. I'm not asking you to pay it back in one lump sum, but think of how you felt when you're sitting down giving to your charitable contributions throughout the year, or when you get that letter that says, hey, how are you doing? Don't forget how you felt when you received this money, and think about paying it forward. That's all it really is. Like I said, I have a lot of things to do and a lot of tasks, and financial collection is not one of them. I will just tell you that right now.
Well, again, foundation.centralpenn.edu. It's going to open up on the 1st and close the 25th. So please make sure you stop by and be prepared to answer, how do you plan to use your education to help others? And make sure you check that Stabler Foundation box and Don't be fooled by the 200-word limit
No.
that it says. All right, we have just a couple minutes left, and of course, I would be remiss to have you on a summer podcast and not talk about one of the most fun days of work that I get to have each and every year. And we're talking about the 52nd annual Central Penn Golf Open that's going to take place on Friday, August 11th at Rich Valley Golf for an 8 a.m. shotgun start.
Yes.
So let's talk a little bit more about the golf tournament, where people can go to get more information, and what we're looking forward to this year.
Absolutely. Okay, so right now we're right at around 29 teams so far have signed up.
And we can only have 36, so
That
there's
is
only
correct.
7 left.
That's right. Last year we had to turn 2 teams away, which is a good thing and a bad thing. I always hate to turn somebody away, but
They should have signed up earlier.
that's what I'm saying. So there's still a little space left. So if you are interested, go to centralpenn.edu/golfopen and sign up. This is our one fundraiser that we do annually, and it is a lot of fun out in the golf course. I say that. Now let me clarify. I do not golf. I don't think I've ever golfed in my life. I tell people all the time, I throw a party around golf. That's what I do. My goal that day is that everyone leaves saying that this is the best golf outing that they have attended all year. That's my thing. So we make sure that we have plenty of beverages and food for you throughout the day. We have beverage carts that go around. We have one on the front 9, one on the back 9. You should always be hydrated. And there's food. They have snacks on the golf cart. The other thing that we do is I go to Farmers Market, West Shore Farmers Market, and we get those homemade soft pretzels.
They are so ridiculous.
They are so ridiculously delicious. So, like I said, it's a day of fun. It's a day of fundraising. And so, if you're there and you see a golf cart gone past with a beverage cart, and they're nice enough to bring you a beverage, tip them.
Bring some cash with you.
That's right. Bring cash, but we also are making it easier because we're going to have QR codes. You can just scan it and keep on going. And we'll have a couple basket raffles that we do. So it's like I said, it's just always a day of fun. It's a lot of work up until the day, but my whole goal is, like I said, of course, I love to raise funds, but my goal is for everyone to leave having a wonderful day, knowing what it is that we do at Central Penn College Education Foundation, why we do it, and are eager to sign up for the following year.
So again, if you have any desire in golfing, please go to centralpenn.edu/golfopen. Of course, Sandy and Abby will be there. Abby's actually going to cover it for the nightly news, so we're going to have a little story after the fact to help sort of wrap it up. One of the best meals ever, always great fun during the sort of ceremony at the end, and it's just something that not only myself, but I think everyone looks forward to.
I was going to say, I try and make it not stuffy at the end.
No,
it's like
definitely
you all have golfed all day. It's hot 9 times out of 10. It's very hot. And so it's just like, it's just the end of the celebration. That's what it is.
So I'm honored to be a part of that. I'll be playing with Steve Hassinger from Career Services, and we're coming for the title this year.
There you go. I love it. Give it a try.
So, well, and Abby, I just want to thank you not only for stepping up to be a part of this, but also sharing your advice for other students. I mean, you've had success doing these essays, and I really think that advice could be extremely helpful for the folks that are out there listening. So thank you for being you, but thank you for helping Sandy with all of this, because summer for Sandy is always just the craziest
Summer's
time.
crazy.
And I think any chance that I get to share my experiences, because I know how it feels to start college and not really have an idea of who is there to help you and what is there to help you. So any advice that I can share, I'm grateful to share.
Fantastic. And Sandy, as always, I love having you on. We have you on twice a year when the scholarship essays are open, so we'll look forward to having you back in the wintertime.
Sounds great. I love to be here.
All right. Well, hey, that's going to do it for this episode of the Nightly News Podcast. I'd like to thank Nightly News President and Education Foundation intern Abby Bresky and the Executive Director of the Central Penn College Education Foundation, Sandy Box, for joining us today. That's going to do it for this episode of the Nightly News Podcast. We'll see you again next time.
Hi, this is Steve Hassinger, Career Services Director. Thank you for listening to the Nightly News Podcast.
welcome everybody to the Nightly News Podcast. This is Professor Paul Miller, and I'm so honored to be joined for our soccer preview today with men's soccer head coach here at Central Penn College, Brian Osbourne. Brian, thank you for joining the program today, and we're looking forward to chatting about the upcoming season for soccer.
No, I really appreciate it, Paul.
It's certainly my pleasure. We're also being joined here by the newly crowned vice president of the Nightly News Media Club, as well as an academic All-American in 2022 with Knight Soccer, Andrew Hunter. Andrew, thank you not only so much for joining us today, but for your efforts across campus with our club and certainly with the soccer team.
Yep, no problem.
All right, well, a lot of things that we want to talk about, and really we kind of have to start back at last season. You know, coming out of COVID, it was a challenge for across the board on our sports teams. Not only did men's and women's soccer both lose significant time to the COVID and not only just the pandemic itself, but also sort of things that came along with that, but also our baseball team was impacted, our basketball team was impacted, basketball teams. So let's just start off that's kind of where you were introduced to Central Penn College on the tail end of that. What challenges did that provide to you, not only from a playing standpoint, but a recruiting standpoint?
Yeah, I mean, it was a gift to be able to come in and basically get told you have a blank canvas and your own paintbrush, and you can do what you want with it. COVID hit the program hard, decimated the roster, really came in and had no returners. So there's a beauty behind that. I got to go out, find recruits, find potential players that fit my mold, what I'm looking for out of a student athlete. I like high character guys that will take pride in starting a program. Of course, you run into a lot of hurdles. You have no product to sell as a coach when you're recruiting. There was a beauty behind that struggle, and I've enjoyed it. It's been a process, but we're kind of rounding the corner going into year 2.
On one hand, though, isn't that sort of a blessing in disguise? I mean, the fact that you are able to come in, maybe from a recruiting standpoint, I mean, I'd imagine almost every college was sort of in some way or another in the same boat, though. So even though, we had some truly unique problems here, I think that also gives you an opportunity to tell the people coming in that they have a chance to really not only just compete for a job, but really to build a legacy here as part of Central Penn Knights athletics.
Yeah, I think that was a big selling point going into 2022 season. Is I told them your footprint's going to be a lot bigger at this program than it would be any other one. You'll be able to 5, 10, 15 years down the road say, hey man, I started that. That's kind of cool. And that was a big thing for a lot of recruits coming into last season and heading into 23 for sure.
So one of the biggest things that obviously we have to talk about before we even get into last season is your new home at Skyline Sports Complex on City Island, just next to FNB Field. What impact did, not only, do you mind sharing with us how all of that came together? I would love to hear more about that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a funny story because as soon as I was hired, Michael Fedor, our VP, really called me into his office and said, hey, Coach, what do you need? And growing up in the area, I grew up in Camp Hill. I know the area very well. And I said, I just don't want to play our games at Adams-Rickey Park next to a Fun Fort.
I mean, honestly, I've been to Adams-Rickey. It's a wonderful place. Not necessarily the best spot for college athletics. Let's just say that. I think that's fair to say.
Yes, absolutely. And I said, you know what? I don't think Skyline has been used for a legitimate soccer program since the Harrisburg City Islanders folded.
And that was pre-COVID, right?
Yeah. And I told him, I was like, man, I think we should go after it. Why not? And fortunate enough, we got the ball rolling and got the heads together and came up with a great partnership with the city of Harrisburg and landed that. And I think that kind of snowballed into the baseball team getting the Senator Stadium. So the fact that we were able to take over City Island and we're able to play under the lights and have our own stadium, it's something very unique.
I think, speaking from someone who does have a lot to do with the athletics program here in terms of our broadcasts of men's and women's basketball and baseball, it just is a natural progression of our programs. I mean, again, no disrespect to In the Net, but In the Net's a good 40, 45 minutes from here. And again, wonderful facility, love going there, great people, have always had an excellent experience there. But nothing compares to playing at FNB Field, and the same can be said for you when you're taking Adams-Rickey Park. Again, no offense to Adams-Rickey Park or the fine people of the borough of East Pennsboro, right? Skyline is a whole different animal. I mean, you're playing on a professional field with, like you said, lights, great amenities. I mean, it's it's got to mean everything to your team to make that stand, like to move on with this progression in the program.
Yeah, I think what's really cool, and again, like I said, growing up in the area, seeing people go for walks around City Island and then stopping and walking over to our field and watching the rest of the game. That's a cool atmosphere. It's unique. You could be on Front Street in downtown Harrisburg and see the lights, see our banners waving. Kudos to marketing. But it's a whole different new vibe for Central Penn men's and women's soccer in general. So
now, Andrew, I want to bring you in here, and again, we'll get to last season here in just a moment, but tell me what it was like for you, who's played competitive soccer for a very long period of time. What was it like, you being from this area, the first time you stepped out on Skyline Sports Complex in goal? What did that mean to you? Like, did you have the chance to soak it in while you were out there?
Well, most of the time, I don't know if you know this, but I always got distracted by the skyline. Probably gave up a couple goals because of it. But I've always gone to Senators games when I was growing up, and I never knew that was there because my mom never showed it to me. But it was exciting to step on that field, especially for the homecoming game under the lights. It was just surreal with all the fans there. It was just really fun.
Well, we're going to run it back this year. So, let's talk a little bit about last year. The 7-9 mark, I mean, obviously, in hindsight, you probably would have hoped that you would have done a little bit better. Maybe there were a couple of close games that maybe got away from you. But considering the fact that you're coming in with this blank canvas, an almost entirely new roster, a new home facility, I'm hoping that you look back at that as a successful season as far as it went.
100%. I'm not going to look at it and be like, oh, it's a losing record. It was a losing season. A majority of the coaches we faced after the game, we shook hands and they said, I can't believe you guys are in year one. That talent you have on your roster is out of this world. And so I look at it. Granted, I will take some blame for the 7-9 record because I packed our schedule with some really tough opponents. But that was just the confidence I had in our personnel coming in, going into 22. So yeah, I think overall guys are looking at it like, man, it was fun, and they were disappointed at the end of the season. But I think it kind of just lit a fire under them, and they're really excited for this upcoming season.
I mean, there were certainly some contests on the calendar here that probably could have went either way. I'm looking at October 11th, Manor College in a 2-1 loss at home, and then even the college, Allegheny College of Maryland, the 4-2 sort of back-to-back there at home. I mean, it's all one bounce away from going the other direction. So I guess what I'm getting at is, and I don't want to belabor this point, but you won 3 of your first 4 against tough competition to start the season. You did very well at home, and in the end, I mean, you should absolutely be proud of the efforts that you had. And beyond that, 4 All-Americans last year between Jake Philippe, Amson Charleston, Jaeger James, and of course, Mr. Andrew Hunter as well. What did that mean to you? Of course, it's interesting to talk about All-American achievements because it's not... Soccer of all sports is not an individual sport. You can have the best player on the field and still not be the best team. What did it mean to you that those 3 were able to come in and just have the impact that they did?
Yeah, I mean, I went out and I went after some really high-level talent going into the season. Wanted to recruit some personnel that I just thought I could build a team around, and not having a All-American first team or second team in program history, and then having 3. And then also an academic All-American was just, I think, a kudos to our coaching staff. Like we went out and really sought after some really high-level talent. But, I mean, it's kudos to those guys. They've worked their tails off. They have their aspirations, and they worked hard day in and day out in training sessions. And those guys, those 3, those two first team and second team, Jagger, Jake, and Amson, they set the tone in training sessions a lot. They held the team at a very high standard. Andrew, being the academic All-American, sets the tone for us off the field. I will give him kudos. He's the perfect student-athlete representation.
There's no question about that. And I have him in class, and you can ask him. I tell him the same thing, and just honestly wish there were more students that were more in line with the effort that he puts in and the quality that he also turns in as well.
Yeah, I can't speak more highly of Andrew, but overall, just in general, I'm privileged, and I'm honored to coach these guys. I think I got really lucky.
Andrew, same sort of question. Obviously, you're the academic piece, and we'll talk about that. But what was it like playing with the three gentlemen in front of you that were at the caliber that they are? How much easier did that make your job?
Well, they were all forwards and midfielders, but it did make my job easier. I was usually the captain on my high school team, and Jake and Jagger and Amson were the captains for us last year, and they really set the tone, and they held very high expectations for all of us.
Awesome. Well, I do want to kind of kick it forward, but before we do that, I want to just ask Andrew one final question. So we talk about being an academic All-American, and that just has to do with GPA and things like that. Still an unbelievable honor nonetheless. We have a lot of student athletes here as residential students and listeners to the program. What are your tips? I mean, what is that? Last year was really the first experience that you had being a student athlete per se in season. What are some tips that you can provide to your fellow, athletes that might help them kind of balance this? Because before you answer that question, it's hard. You're putting a lot of time in, not only just traveling, the home games, practice, going and doing conditioning work, weights. I mean, it's a whole nother thing that you're adding to the fold here. Were you able to be so successful and still continue to be?
You just have to set a schedule. You just have to sit down, look at all your classes, see all the assignments you have to do. I have 4 classes. I have eight assignments to do 2 every day. And if I have extra time, I do an extra assignment. So if I have a home game or a away game with travel and then weights and anything like that, I have time to do that.
I think the biggest thing really is just having a grasp of what your schedule is, especially in season. If you know you've got 2 games that week, you have to do whatever you can to try to get ahead or work ahead. And just from my experience, that's what I've seen a lot of, is that a lot of folks are more reactionary than proactive and kind of just say, oh, well, I have a game Saturday, I'll just do all my work on Sunday. And then you're hurt or you're not feeling well or you don't want to get out of bed, and then things come and go. And especially in an accelerated program, Andrew, I really think it's so important for all of our student athletes to have a really strong sense of how they're spending their time. So I appreciate that. Well, let's kick it forward to the 2023 season that's going to kick off on August 26th against Patrick Henry. And of course, our home opener on September 12th at 4 o'clock. What do we have going on? We're here in the off season right now, and we're getting ready for that opening kickoff. Tell us a little bit more about what you're doing here in the off season and some of the things, bright spots you're looking forward to.
Yeah, we're rounding out our roster as we speak. We had some guys leave, unfortunately, but also got some guys that are returning that we kind of want to fit a mold around with recruits coming in. So right now, these guys are working their tails off. They have their off-season workout packets, lifting packets. They'll be starting up with the strength and conditioning coach closer to the summer term. But really, we're excited because 22 put us on the map. Year 1, and we have a good skeleton core coming back, and we
3 All-Americans.
3 All-Americans. I mean, it's hard to complain about that, but we went out and we got some really good guys coming in. And when I say good guys, I mean just high character gentlemen that want to come in. They don't care how big, how small the school is, what kind of facilities we have. They're going to come in, they're going to work their tails off, and they're going to take pride in just being a student athlete at Central Penn.
That's amazing. So tell us a little bit more about the schedule this season. So we can kind of I'm just really quickly going to take a look at some of the games that we have coming up. Of course, I mentioned that kickoff at Patrick Henry. I may not follow USCAS soccer as closely as I should, but I know Patrick Henry is a very tough team. So talk about the thought process of putting such a tough team as your opening contest of the season.
It's, again, maybe it's a flaw of mine, but I see the potential we have in our roster, and I just think we can be competitive with the highest level. That's why we packed the schedule with a team like Patrick Henry. We play Penn State Brandywine September 9th, who were the 2021 national champions.
Wow.
So we dropped some teams from last year, but we added some guys. Some coaches reached out to us and said, hey, we saw your record last year, but we also, more importantly, we heard from other coaches saying, like, these guys are a tough team. We should put them on our schedule. So we were fortunate enough to get a lot of attention from the coaches poll last year. We finished 10th in the coaches poll. So that's just a lot of, we gained a lot of respect last year. So
early in the season, you're sort of road warriors here. You've got the home opener at Skyline on September 12th versus Bucks County. But outside of that, you are not at home for your first month of the season, including at Penn State Mont Alto, at Penn State York for the Penn State Mont Alto tournament over Labor Day. Of course, Penn State Brandywine. You also have a Penn State Brandywine Classic coming up. You're playing in a lot of tournaments as well. So what impact does that have being on the road for so long and not having the opportunity to be and play in front of your home crowd?
Yeah, the guys are gonna have to have sustainable focus for the first month. Really, I'm challenging them. I think we have a good group of guys, like I said, coming in, and those first 2 weekend tournaments are going to be special. We're staying overnight at Penn State Brandywine. And I think road games, they challenge individuals, they challenge their mental toughness, and really their fitness is going to be tested as well. We had a low roster last year of about 14. We're going into the season with 21.
Wow.
So we have that depth that we can compete in twice in a weekend. So we're looking forward to the road games. I know that the guys are going to be exhausted come September, but finishing the season off, ending it with a lot of home games is going to be really exciting.
Absolutely, and I want to talk about that. So starting September 23rd, we have September 23rd, and mark these on your calendar, September 23rd, 29th, October 3rd, October 6th, which is some of those games are over break, so of course we still hope that we get a lot of people to come out. But 4 consecutive home games, it's almost like, it's interesting because I had the very similar conversation with Coach Stern. They had front-loaded a lot of road games and then had a chunk in that middle of the season where they played a lot of home games. Ironically enough, Coach Osbourne, that coincided with an unbelievable winning streak that the team basically turned their entire season around, winning 11 consecutive games. You know, is it maybe on the outside looking in, is it like, can we just maybe get to those home games and then we know, we're going to have 5 out of 7 contests there, including on homecoming, back at home?
Yeah, I see what you're doing there. The baseball team rattled off a lot of wins at
home. That coincided
so,
with that home the home stretch that they had.
So I did. I think as a coaching staff, we looked at our schedule and we said we think by September we think we could get to this record, and we have confidence in the guys at home, especially with a crowd we've had in the past years, that we could start rattling off some wins too, and that could set us up really well to get an at-large bid for the national tournament. So. Yeah, it was strategic on our part. Also, kind of coincides with the Harrisburg Senators schedule.
Of course.
We need that locker room. So both those things combined kind of are setting this season up to have a tough start, but an exciting finish.
The biggest thing that I want to talk about before we kind of move to some parting thoughts is there's a huge one. Friday, October 20th, Penn State Schuylkill, Skyline Sports Complex for part of homecoming weekend. That's an important day for us because that will be our Nightly News Hall of Fame celebration in the afternoon, and we intend, so long as it's an evening game, we intend to join you for that contest. Tell me, as you think about homecoming under the lights, the amount of people that you have there, your last game of the season, what does it mean to have either the increased visibility or tell me what you're expecting, not only from your experience last year, but this year on homecoming eve?
Yeah, homecoming is something special. Last year, the school does such a great job setting up for that weekend, and we're honored to be that prime time 7 o'clock time slot. The attendance record was shattered last year at our game, obviously with the stadium compared to Adams-Rickey Park. Nothing to take away from Adams-Rickey, but we're just pumped because we're trying to put our program on the map, not just in the USCAA men's soccer division, but just in the city of Harrisburg. We want to be that new City Islanders program. We want to be the premier collegiate program in the city of Harrisburg. So having the capability of having our games on City Island and homecoming weekend of Friday night, it's awesome. And partnering with the Harrisburg Beach Club and some other local businesses that are going to pitch in and help out with homecoming weekend, it's just going to be something special.
Andrew, I know that you kind of already talked about this, but as you look forward to this season, what are some things that just, again, based on your interaction with some of the new players, what do you anticipate for this upcoming season?
I think we have the potential with the new recruits to win the ESAC, just like the baseball team. That's my main goal for this season, and I think we have all the power of the world to do that.
And I think as closely as you worked with the baseball team this year. So Andrew was one of our ace reporters and did so much with the baseball team this year. And just getting to know those guys and seeing the joy that came along with that championship, the pride. Yeah. I think, and I've had private conversations with you, I think that you want to experience that.
Yes, I do. I want to talk some crap with Kevon, my roommate, because he won one. I want one too.
Well, and sort of on a, I don't want to jump too far ahead. Of course, you have your upcoming soccer season, but frankly, this might be your last season playing soccer. You're getting ready to graduate and graduate in near record time, I might add. But is that something that you think about this year in terms of how hard you're going to hit not only the books, but the weight room and the conditioning and the field and practice, because you know that this might be sort of your swan song?
Yeah, I'd kind of label this as my last dance. So it's like the Michael Jordan thing, even though I'm a LeBron fan. But I think about it a lot. I'm definitely going to miss it, but I just have one more time to do it, so I'm going to put everything into it.
Aside from that, are there, do you believe that you're going to continue playing soccer after this? Are there leagues and rec leagues or anything that you can, obviously not at the same level of competition, but is it something that you, do you love soccer that much that you believe that you're going to continue playing in the future?
Yeah, some probably men's leagues in my local area, but yeah, that's pretty much it.
Well, I got to tell you, we are so excited. I can already tell you that we are working on getting photography there. We're working on getting people to come out and cover the games. Casey has reached out to some of our students from the Nightly News to continue to try to build on the coverage that we give the soccer team. And all I can just tell you is we're going to be there in your corner. And if there's ever anything that we can do as a group to help promote what you're doing, we're going to do everything we possibly can.
Hey, Paul, I appreciate everything you've done for us so far and continue to do.
One last thing, just in case somebody out there, maybe in high school or maybe looking to transfer, might be interested in the program. I know that we're kind of running out of time here, but just say for future reference, give your pitch.
Not a lot of college programs can offer a footprint like we can offer incoming freshmen. The fact that they can play right away and have the impact on a program, not just a program, but a school in general, is unique. And the fact that we get to play in the stadium we get to play in, you can graduate early, and, free housing scholarship too. So come join us.
Can't beat that. Well, and again, you can always reach out to Brian Osbourne at centralpenn.edu for more information, or you can always reach out to our athletic director, Casey Hicks at centralpenn.edu, again, for any more information on any sport that if you would like to come here and play. Well, Coach, I got to tell you, I know that first game at Patrick Henry is going to be a tough one, but we've got all the faith in the world. And, of course, we're going to keep it down September 12th at 4 for the opener, and, of course, October 20th for homecoming. So you can always go to centralpennknights.com, click on soccer for the schedules and more information to check that out. So we're going to be in your corner, and we wish you the best during the off season and going forward to our season.
I appreciate it, guys.
All right. And Andrew, thank you so much, not only just for being you and being a wonderful addition to the Nightly News, but thank you so much for being and developing into a leader here on this team. And it's so needed, and I'm sure Coach Osbourne tells you the same thing, coming into last season, for you to stand up and step up the way you did. It's I'm sure had a massive impact on the ability of the team to be competitive and successful.
I probably won't be able to do it with either one of you, so thank you.
No problem. All right, well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Nightly News Podcast. I'd like to thank men's soccer coach Brian Osbourne and academic All-American Andrew Hunter for being here today. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and that's going to do it for this episode of the Nightly News Podcast. We'll see you again next time.